Welcome to this week's DeepTech315. That's Doug. I am Gene. Our three topics are Sam Altman and the $7 trillion push to improve the availability of chips for AI. Second, we're going to talk about Meta and what Zuckerberg is talking about relative to Quest 3 and its position against Apple and Vision Pro. And last, we're going to wrap with Doug's Intelligent Alpha. This is his AI picking portfolio managers. Always fun to see the update there. And you would definitely want to stay tuned for that, see how AI is doing machine versus human. So we'll take it back to the top. The story was out maybe feels like a week or so ago, but it just keeps rearing its head, just given it, the raw magnitude. But essentially, Sam Altman was presenting, where was he, like in Saudi Arabia or something like that, or Dubai, and talking about the opportunity for really changing the whole world's chip production process, and talked about this $5 to $7 trillion in investment. And to put that in a perspective, the Wall Street Journal recently reported that humanity to date in the chip design and build out has been about $1 trillion. So he's talking about a 5 to 7x order of magnitude versus the past, call it 40, 50 years. And my take was, he actually doesn't mean 5 to 7 billion. What he really means is that we need to have better chip production, and maybe it's $1 trillion, but he's putting the stake in the ground that there needs to be some improvements around chips for AI.
I would never take Sam Altman at not his word. He probably does mean 5 to 7 trillion. I think if he could find a way to raise that, he would find a way to deploy it. I do think, though, when you think about 5 to 7 trillion, there's two kinds of numbers that get reported. There's actual numbers. There's fundraising numbers, like when a company raises $100 million for their D round at $1 billion post valuation. And then there's government style numbers where they say we're going to save $1 trillion, but if you look at the asterisks, it's like $1 trillion over 25 years. You do the math, and
Oh,
it's
gotcha.
suddenly not quite as exciting. And I think that's probably the reality of this. If someone says we're going to find a way to fund you $5 trillion, Sam Altman, I doubt it would be that they just cut him a check for $5 trillion. You'd have to have a lot of money, a lot of liquidity to be able to do that. I think it would be a tranched thing, probably over a decade. But even then, you're still talking about investing $500 billion maybe over a 7 or 10-year period. It's still a huge number.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put that into perspective, TSMC, they're going to invest somewhere around $40 or $50 billion to build their fabs in Arizona. So if you get $500 billion a year, maybe that's like 10 fabs that you could spin up to try to put it into some kind of context.
Mm-hmm.
You still don't have the institutional knowledge. So I think there is still a bottleneck, and there's always a bottleneck in every process.
That's the
even if you
piece
had the
that,
capital,
yeah.
that's the thing that's really hard, is how do you get the people then to be able to helm the fabs?
And at Deepwater, we're investors in TSMC, and that's one of the reasons why we feel good about that investment, is the human capital, the engineers. And I think that's one of the challenges, that you can throw money at things, but to actually build humans. As I think about that human piece, I wonder if could AI actually help solve some of these management of these incredibly complex fabs. Could AI kind of help automate that and kind of get us through this human knowledge bottleneck to pave the road for that future that Altman's talking about?
Probably over time. I would say, though, that again, you're going to have a time issue there too, in terms of how quickly could an AI be ready to do that. And the answer is, it's probably, I would still guess, years away. You need to get something toward, I've called it infinite intelligence. I'm not really looking forward to, the super intelligence thing. I don't think you need that, but I think you do need, ironically, almost wide scale, massive compute availability to be able to handle having a machine learn to do complex tasks like that. And so when I break it down, forget about the number for a minute. I think what Altman is saying, and probably to your prior point, Gene, is we need to invest a lot more money in chips, because if we are going to deliver on this AI future that we're talking about, it's going to happen because we have the compute power necessary to do it, and we just don't have enough power right now. That's what he's saying.
Agree with that. It also reminds me how strong NVIDIA's business is. They're going to be reporting next week. And really, they are largely untouched, 85% plus market share of the GPU market. Perhaps over the next decade, that will change. We'll jump to our second topic, which is Zuckerberg. I just love this about him. Comes out swinging and puts this video out. It's a short video, 3.5 minute video, where he's basically building the argument that the Quest 3, which is called $500, is actually a better hardware product than the Vision Pro at $3,500, so a 7x difference. And I think he does bring up some really valid points around some of the decisions they've made to keep the weight light. It's lighter than Vision Pro, and as I've used it, that was one of my big issues, is it just felt heavy. Vision Pro felt heavy. So I thought that was a good point. He also gave credit to Apple around the eye tracking, which I think is incredible. And he said they're going to bring that back. And kind of the biggest picture he painted was the concept that they're going to be the open source and Apple's going to be the closed source. And that resonated with me too. But in the back of my mind, there was this conversation that was playing. There's the piece about wartime CEO. If we can discuss that, Doug. But there's also the piece around, is this the right place for Meta to be investing $15 billion a year? And so the wartime piece, I love that. He's definitely has that edge to him.
Well, I think it's also worth remembering that Apple has had some harsh criticism for Meta and their business the last couple of years. I mean, this whole issue with IDFA and tracking, I mean, Apple has kind of called out Meta and said, we don't think advertising is a noble business to some extent. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I think it's important for us to remember these companies aren't exactly on the friendliest terms.
Yeah, this defines bad blood in big tech.
Yeah, and Zuckerberg is not starting something with this. This is a continuation of the bad blood. I've used the Vision Pro now. I have it. We've had one at Deepwater. We've kind of been sharing around. I haven't used the Quest 3 yet, so I couldn't have an objective comparison. But to your point, like, it is heavy. I wouldn't pay $3,500 for it, is my quick answer. And there's not a killer use case for that product. I doubt there's a killer use case for the Quest product either. When we think about investing billions of dollars, both of these companies in this product line, they're both investing billions. They need to figure out a killer use case. I mean, that has been the knock on VR, and it continues to be, in my view, even with spatial computing coming out.
So we've looked at some of those numbers, and in Zuckerberg's quick video, he mentioned 3 times gaming. He talked about fitness too. Apple stays clear. They don't mention gaming, very rarely mention gaming. Apple announced with 600 apps at launch, and those are 600 apps that are made for Vision Pro versus the million plus apps that are basically iPad apps that are converted over. Forget those don't count. But of those 600, we counted 42% were gaming related versus 72% were gaming related on Quest platform. And so as I saw this, I was excited as Meta investors, like, they're spending a lot of money, and maybe they can get to that 80% option, or that 80% of the market when it comes to metaverse spatial computing. But then there was this also like nagging thing. He's still talking about gaming. They really don't have that many apps. 3 years into it, 560 apps. It's like, show me the money. Like, it's just not there, which gets us back to, I think these devices are making a lot of progress, but they still are need of an application where people are excited about them.
They both are. And I think what you just described to me says that it's really going to be on Meta and it's going to be on Apple to figure out that app. I don't think they're ever going to foster the developer ecosystem because they don't have the users. I mean, you need to have tens of millions of users probably to be a viable device for someone to want to build something on so they can actually make money and fund the business. And so for now, the foreseeable future, I think both Apple and Meta need to figure out what can we build that's just so compelling people can't get away from it. They need to keep coming back, and then they have to buy this device because it's so good, and neither of them have figured it out yet.
I do think Apple has an advantage relative to the developer community versus Meta. Maybe that changes with Llama over time. And I can say Vision Pro still is searching for that killer use case. I have been capturing more than half of my videos that after using Vision Pro, I'm capturing off my phone, I'm using in spatial, because It's not the reason to go out and spend $3,500, but for those who have kind of experienced a little bit of that spatial video, I think it's pretty fun. So we're going to jump to the last topic, which is intelligent alpha. If you have not been following Doug and his deload, you got to get on track with this because it is compelling. You had a comment this week. I laughed out loud when I read it. You said AI is a 50-legged man in an ass-kicking competition. It's doing really well. Let us frame it in. How well are those AI strategies that you're doing with Intelligent Alpha doing relative to the benchmarks?
Yeah, the ass kicking contest, the hat tip to Charlie Munger, R.I.P. He always had these phrases about if you didn't really study, if you didn't get curious and really do your work, you were like a one-legged man in an ass kicking contest. So with AI, what I've found, what I've learned just experimenting with generative AI, using GPT, using Gemini to build stock portfolios, it just has so many advantages over humans, especially that they're not human. They don't have emotions that they deal with. What that's translated into is 15 core strategies that I track. 12 of them right now are outperforming their benchmarks since inception. Average run of these is about 5.5 months. Some of the longest strategies I've been tracking for about 7 months. And the average strategy is beating its benchmark by over 400 basis points at this point. So pretty good amount of outperformance in just half of a year.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's crazy outperformance, I would say. And from our perspective, we still want to keep testing these. And like, what's the amount of testing before we can, put more money behind these strategies? I mean, is it a year? Is it 9 months? I mean, how do we know when we've kind of broken through that threshold of testing?
I think we're already there, in my opinion. I mean, at Deepwater, there's 2 of them that we're running live with partner capital now, and those are both performing well. One is a large cap focused tech strategy, so it's 12 tech stocks, high conviction, competes against the QQQ. And since inception, that strategy has beat the QQQ by, it's almost an unbelievable number, but 1,600 basis points, 16 percentage points, and the QQQ has done great.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've wanted to be concentrated in large cap tech, which is exactly what the AI is doing in this strategy, you've been in the right place. And then the other strategy that we're testing with real money is a long short strategy, inspired by Julian Robertson, old school Tiger, one of the originators in the hedge fund world. You basically buy the best companies, go long the best, and you short the worst. That's what he used to always say. That was his simple strategy. And that has been great as well. It's outperforming its benchmark by almost 300 basis points. And by the way, it was short Kraft Heinz, which just reported today the stock was down 6% last time I checked. It has been nailing shorts more recently. This quarter, it's had a great short
Yeah,
book,
had Boeing too,
which
didn't
I've
it?
been. It had Boeing, it had Mobileye, it had a handful of really good ones so far. So I think it's getting better. What excites me the most when you ask about like how do we know that we've tested enough? I actually see it. I can see it because I'm looking at it almost every day, kind of getting better and smarter over time as it makes these picks. Like some of the picks make more sense to me. In the beginning, some of it's like, man, I would never put that in there. And sometimes I'm wrong to think I'd never put that in there. But I can see the intelligence sort of evolving, in my opinion, at least. And also my ability to use the AIs, I think, is evolving. Like I'm understanding how they think. And there's a little bit of a symbiotic process, I think, between, the human that I still think is ultimately the kernel of inspiration for generative AI. You need that component. And then the intelligence that the AI is actually harnessing to, do whatever it's asked to do, including pick stocks.
Mm-hmm. Power of being unemotional, power of the deload. Make sure you check that out and check us out next week on our next episode. On behalf of Doug and Gene, bye for now.